All right. Welcome to a brand new Sarah Fraser Show podcast, Frasiacs. A lot to get to. Today's podcast episode is I can't believe my OBGYN said that to me. It's actually really not that shocking. I just if you've been following this journey over the past 2 weeks, Schman and I had a very difficult miscarriage. It was 14, we were at 14 weeks, or we were supposed to be, but the fetus had really stopped growing at about 11 and a half weeks. We were on vacation for 2 weeks. So we thought, things were fine. We go to check in. Although you can listen to the whole miscarriage podcast because I sort of had a feeling things were not fine for many signs. But anyhow, I had a DNC. This week, I went to my 2-week check-in post DNC, and my OBGYN said this to me, and I didn't anticipate it. And I hope that it gives you hope. It's why I talk about difficult things on my podcast that happen in my life, or sometimes I have guests on of a whole, bunch of different life situations, because you never know what resonates with you or what inspires you to keep going. Because once you become an adult, life is shitty. It's a lot of work, and it doesn't always go the way we want. And somehow you become acutely more aware of I don't know, how fragile life is, which really blows. So anyway, I'll get to that. But I have a lot to get to. It's also kind of a throwback episode for those of you who loved The Kane Show, or who loved the podcast when the Sarah Fraser Show teamed up with Paul Wharton Style from DC. I actually saw both of those guys in the same week here in Los Angeles. Oh, and by the way, we just survived a hurriquake. I know. Was everyone following this? I feel like people were, because I was getting message after message. Are you okay in California? Which I appreciate so much. And in the middle of just a rare hurricane, we also get an earthquake. Yes, this is, by the way, because a lot of people now listen to the Sarah Fraser Show in the Los Angeles area. Can you please let me know this? I always love your feedback. I couldn't go on without it. Will you please tell me, is it normal? We've had 3 earthquakes in a year and a half since we've lived here. The first one happened, and they've all been, by the way, in the past 6 months, 8 months. First one happened maybe in March of 2023. No, even before that, like February. I'm going to say my birthday month. Okay. January, February. And that one was off the coast of Malibu, 5 point something. I mean, I woke up out of bed. Like, I jumped out of bed. I knew exactly that it was happening. And it freaked me out. Then when my niece was here in June, we're laying in bed, things began to rattle. You can hear the shower door, which is glass, kind of, wiggle back and forth. Jumped out of bed. Nobody reacted. My niece didn't get up. Thank God KJ doesn't wake up. And then this past weekend, in the midst of a hurricane, getting a record number of inches of rain, I'm sitting there and I'm like seeing the plant sway, and I'm sitting at the table, and you could just feel the building shake. And I'm like, you have to be kidding. We're getting an earthquake in the middle of Hurricane Hillary? Sure enough, out in Ojai, which is like 30 miles from here, 40 miles from here, 5.5. Okay. Is that normal to live in Los Angeles? And in a year's time, you'll have 3 that you feel? Okay. What happens to, I thought that these earthquakes were supposed to hit the San Andreas fault, which is out, I think 100 miles from here, like in Palm Springs, in Palm Desert. What's going on there? Isn't that where you're supposed to be radioactive? How are we getting all this activity here? Okay. And I thought like San Francisco was it. Like that was the place where the San Andreas fault ran through. And that was the one that everybody is so damn nervous about. Why am I so damn nervous living in Los Angeles where people go, oh, it's just tiny ones. I guess they are tiny, those, but Lord, I feel every single one. I'm like, how am I like living? How am I feeling these? What the F? Oh my God. So say a prayer. I'm always praying like no earthquakes, come on, God. Move them out to like, can it go? Can we have a major earthquake? Not even a major one. Can't all the earthquakes be in the San Andreas Fault, like way out in the desert where hardly anybody lives? Ugh. Anyway, so now I'm sure you saw all Sunday, all weekend long, hurriquake trending. I'll leave it to California. I'm telling you, when you live here, it's not nearly as exciting as the media makes it. And I know I've been in the media a long time, so I know, what sells for a story, but um it's really not that amazing living here. However, if you read the news headlines, Death Valley flooded, there was tornado warnings issued for San Diego. I mean, it was bad. It was bad in some areas for sure. So, and then a 5.1 magnitude earthquake, huh? And it is, there's a lot of flooding, but overall, I love California. I think you guys know this. However, never a dull moment here. Before I get into what my OBGYN said, because I hope that other people may find this encouraging if you too are trying to have a child, especially over the age of 40. I'm 41. I love being in my 40s. 40s, I think, are way better than your 30s because you really start to not give a fuck. You really don't care so much. Like if men find you attractive, at least I don't. Let me speak for myself. All right. I spent a lot of the time in my 30s trying to, hooking up with people, which is really fun. Dating schman, dumping schman, because I thought I wanted to hook up with other people, worrying about if people found me hot, really worrying about if I was going to get canceled, what people thought. Now I don't care. Okay. Like I always say now, if this whole podcast, like if my media career goes away, terrific. I will volunteer at KJ school, like I'm doing for the very first time this week. And I will fucking make banana bread from Stellar Eats. Like I will. And yes, that was a sponsored plug, okay. They have really good food and they advertised with the Sarah Fraser Show. So yeah, I'd be just fine. And I mean, I would still put my stuff out just a bitch about, I'd probably be like worse, I guess. So I don't care in my 40s, but trying to have a child in your 40s is not for the faint of heart. Some people, God bless them, like I love it. They have no problems. It's easy for them. And I wish that on everyone. But if it's not, hopefully my OBGYN has some words of encouragement. So blast from the past, though, this past week, both Paul Wharton, who, if you guys are not familiar with Paul Wharton, do me a favor, go to Instagram and follow this man. You've seen him in everything, by the way. He was in the first season of Real Housewives of DC. He was a friend of, he was on MTV Made. If you're wondering, like, God, Paul Wharton, how do I know that name? Or when you go to his Instagram and follow him, if you're like, I feel like I've seen this guy, MTV's Made. He was like the hairstylist on several episodes. So born and raised in DC, we became friends through working together at Fox 5 DC. And then after that, I started my podcast, and Sammy K from The Kane Show, who I also saw this past week, who looks amazing and is doing really well. I'll give you that update. He co-hosted for a year and he wanted to found his company Snacklands, which he did, which is going gangbusters. And it is a vegan snack chip. If you haven't had one, they're awesome. They're here in California. I walk into Erewhon, I walk into Sprouts, I see my friend Sammy K's Snacklands chips there, and I think to myself, any dream is possible. He would say to me years ago when we were on Hot 99.5's The Kane Show, he would say, he always wanted to own his own restaurant, which he did for a hot second, and he wanted to create unique foods. He was always trying. He was the guy trying, I don't know, dipping a banana in hot sauce, deep frying it and adding like mustard or something. I mean, he was always pioneering that, and he invented Snacklands. So he and Paul Wharton came to town. Paul Wharton took over on the Sarah Fraser Show as my co-host after Sammy K left after a year. They both were like a breath of fresh air seeing them. People were like, well, what's Paul up to? He lives in London half of the time and in the United States. He's a big time ambassador for Genesis cars. If you're buying a Genesis, reach out to Paul Wharton. He'll get you a deal. He'll connect you directly to a dealership in your area. They're amazing cars. And he's working on another book. He's living his best life. Paul's amazing. He really is always entertaining. And, he has a famous line that he said on this podcast, which was he was writing